I'm Joel H. Brewster, and I'm no stranger to horror. And this is a podcast where I discuss the big and small of the genre with the hopes to take you from being a casual horror fan to a person like me who's a full-blown horror film fanatic. Today, I'll be discussing the 2017 smash hit, Get Out, written and directed by Jordan Peele. It was an Academy Award nominated and for Dan Kaluuya's role, and it also Academy Award winning for Jordan Peele's writing role. And to discuss this monumental film, I have a person with maybe the greatest resume I've had on the show so far. I'm really excited to list these all off here. Kevin K.L. Martin Jr. is a writer, producer, director, photographer, music manager, councilman, and a former Euroleague basketball player. Kevin, welcome to the show, and I really can't wait to get into all these different things with you as well as the movie.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this. I really was excited when you asked me to be on. I'm super excited to be on this right now.
Oh, thank you. We kind of came to the movie together, but I was really happy how excited you were for this movie. I can't wait to really dive into this with you.
Yes, it was the moment you gave me the choices. I'm like, there's no way for over the years since 2017, the amount of discussions I've had at large and ad nauseum about it. I'm super excited to really get into it.
Yeah, me too. But before we get into that, I'd love to know a little more about you. Let's just start with, how did you get into film?
So short version of that story was, it started with screenwriting. I was in college, and I was actually, after a creative writing class, I was taught the format by a creative writing teacher. I was a freshman and said, look, you're really good at this. You should probably dive into this more. So he taught me the format, and then I really got into writing it. But the thing was, as a D1 athlete, you're not, at that point, you weren't allowed to make money. So I wasn't allowed to kind of shop these things at all. So I started ghostwriting for my then professor, because he was a decently successful screenwriter. Mm-hmm. When I graduated, he actually, as a graduation gift, gave me, we sold 4 scripts during the time that I was in college. Even when I transferred, he came to our graduation party and he gave me the checks for all 4 of those, and with a message saying, you need to do this on a professional basis. And that was awesome. But then I ended up playing overseas, and I was balancing them both. And then once film production came into it, sort of from me being a loudmouth on a set, I was actually on a pretty big show set visiting a friend. And I was in the background as a cinematographer was preparing the shot. And I literally did not mean to say it out loud, but I said, man, I said, nah, this shot wasn't, good. I mean, for lack of a better way of saying this shot was shit. I literally said that. And I thought I said it in my head, but I said it out loud. And the cinematographer shot me a glance, and I go, oh God, they're going to kick me off set. I'm screwed. A couple hours later, he sees us as we're about to leave. He goes, we went back and reshot that. I'm like, wow. And I'm like, well, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hear. His name's Earl Morris. He's a very good guy. And then he goes, you got a good eye. Have you ever done this? I'm like, no, I just write. He goes, you want to run around with me during the summer between seasons? I'm like, absolutely. And I ended up doing that for 4 or 5 years, learning everything I can. This was in the UK. And I learned all the cinematography, all the production stuff, directing. And it kind of grew out of there. And I managed to balance that between basketball, professional basketball, and film for almost 14 years. And then I decided that, I had a plan. I was like, I'm going to dive into this. And around my 12th year overseas, I actually missed a good portion of the preseason to direct a web series in LA. It got canned, it got crushed, but they complimented the directing, which was me. I was really excited. And I said, okay, I know what I'm going to do after I'm done. I'm going to dive all the way into this. And that's how it started.
Wow. I'm really excited to get into the rest of this now. So from there, were you doing photography during that time as well?
Yes. So I've been doing, it started with Polaroids. My family is super artistically inclined, and I probably had a Polaroid in my hand from the time I was 6 years old. My mom always had pictures, and she's still a pretty good photographer, though I don't give her enough credit, but she definitely is a very good photographer. And I've always had an affliction for Polaroids. So I did a lot of digital stuff, but I never really got into digital. I got into it, but it was like not the same thing. Then all of a sudden, 35 millimeter, I had some family members that were in the industry that, edited, like old school edited, cut and tape 35 millimeter film. And I'd be around them every so often. And one day they put a 35 millimeter film camera in my hand. And I was like, this is awesome. The whole process of doing it and developing and all that other stuff. And I did it kind of quietly on my own until probably the last couple of years when everything old became new. So like, vinyl and 35 millimeter and Super 8. And suddenly I'm like, this is my wheelhouse. Like people, this is nuts. People are paying me to do this. And I have an obsession. It's an expensive obsession, but an obsession with the 35 millimeter, 60 millimeter, Super 8. So it's like my thing. That's like, in Polaroids especially. I probably went through 2 boxes of Polaroids just today.
What I like about all the artistic things that you're into, as well as the things that aren't artistic, is you, based on everything I've seen here, you're a team player. Everything you do seems to be very team-based, right? So is that why you got into music management as well, to kind of just like spread that around and help out a team?
Realistically, that was basically it. A lot of the bands, I've been exposed to a lot of art. I know that art, for the most part, the 2 things I learned while getting into my artistic endeavors is, 1, you learn the business side of it, but 2, you learn that this is, art is a team sport, depending on what it is. Most of it is. I've dealt with a lot of musicians. I've represented a bunch of musicians. I've produced some musicians. And I actually was like, all right, I'm not going to get back into music. I actually worked with the label for a long time. Then they got bought. Me and 2 other people who had sold it, made good money off it. And I was like, all right, I'm done with music. I'll dip in here and there. And then I moved back to Jersey, and I happened to be in proximity to Asbury Park, which was a happy mistake because I go to my first show and I see these bands, but they have no understanding of what they're doing or guidance or how to do it. And I'm saying to myself, like Bart Simpson in the beginning, when he's like writing on the chalkboard, I will not get back into music. I will not get back into music. And within a month of me being back here, I was back into music. And I started really just giving advice. And one of the bands I was giving advice, who I happen to be friends with, asked me, hey, they actually called me over and I thought they were going to be like, all right, they wanted me to back off or shut up. He's like, can you be our manager? And I go, in my head, I said, no. I swear to you, I said no. Yeah. But out loud, I was like, yeah, hell yeah, let's do it. And it turned into something. We work now. It's a team of about 6 or 7 of us. We have about 9 or 10 bands. I've actually got back into the studio now and produced a single with the band called The Clydes, called The Fate of California, which was a lot of fun to produce, and it came out well. It's performing well. And it's been a blast. But I'm a big team player. Like, if one goes up, everyone should go up, especially those who've been busting their ass to kind of get to that level. And I do my best to help guide them in every which way, shape, or form, because someone did that for me for basketball, someone did that for me for film. And I think the best thing I could do to give back is to make sure someone gets that opportunity to at least make it to that level where they're like, this is all I do.
Wow. To pivot, because this pivots perfectly into the next part here. As a councilman, it just sounds like, again, you're very passionate about helping people and just helping people in your community. How did you decide to go into that?
So I live in a small town called Highlands, New Jersey. It's about barely 5,000 people. There are more bars than anything. It's like, I think at one point they had more bars per square mile than Las Vegas. And
wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. But the town's walkable. It's not even a square mile. And I would walk this town. I've made a lot of friends, and we would talk. It was just me talking, just telling them, they would tell me their issues. And I grew up with 15 women, so you learn to listen very, very fast. you don't get to talk much, but you learn to listen very, very fast. And I learned to listen, and I was just giving them my ideas and talking to them. And then one day at the beginning of last year, the mayor of the town found me and asked me, he's like, I've heard a lot about you. I'm like, oh no, why would you? I'm like, why would you hear a lot about me? This isn't good. But she was like, I think I would like you to run for the 1 year spot on the council. I'm like, I'm not a politician. I'm just, these are my friends. A lot of these people are older. They've been here a long time. The pandemic and everything is sort of changing the landscape of what they've actually been used to. Some of these guys have been here since the inception of the town, their families anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted answers for them so they don't feel like they're forgotten or pushed out. These are people who have, been there and I see it almost every day. And she convinced me and I was like, all right, I'll do it. And in my head, I always go into a situation thinking I'm going to win. If I don't win, I'm going to find a way to bounce back and win that, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way anyone could have told me in March when she asked me that in November of this past year that I would win by what would be considered a landslide. It was crazy. 82% of the town voted, which was amazing.
Huge turnout.
A huge turnout. I mean, given November 3rd, it was a huge turnout all over the place, but a huge turnout for the town. A town that is notoriously probably opposite of my demeanor and thought process. I ended up winning by almost 900 to 1,000 votes.
Wow.
It was overwhelming. There's a picture of me on Instagram with my fiance, ugly crying, like really overwhelmed by the love that these people are like, at the local level, we trust you to do what's right by us, and they trust me overwhelmingly. And it's been fun. It's been good. I've been able to kind of balance them both. You have your wackadoos here and there, but for every 5,000 people, there's like 7 of them. Yeah. And I've done a lot of talking, a lot of helping, and the progress has been great. For it's only going to be a year. Yeah, it's been amazing. It's been a lot of fun. It's been very rewarding as well.
That's wow. I have one last question before we dive into the movie here.
Sure.
And my last question is, when is the movie of your life coming out? Because holy shit.
I actually, it's funny. Like, I have a friend of mine who's also a producer. He will sit there and he's like, I've known you for 25 years. He's like, I will tell you some of this. He's like, I've witnessed a lot of this. He's like, there's some point where we have to just sit there and you have to let me write this down. And I'm like, man, if I ever get to the point where I think that's an important thing to be heard, I'm down with that. It's actually been pitching a show called Thirst, which is really a show that's wrapped around the 4 friends that I've had from high school, and we've all have different lives, but we only really get together on big events, weddings, funerals, birthday parties. You really don't get to hang out very much, and it's always something crazy that happens, but we've all lived specific. I've always been the scribe, writing their lives and writing ours. So I do really want that to happen, because I think I've lived a very, very comical, very, very unique and different perspective type of life, where I've lived in all these countries. I have these languages running in my head, and I have my perspective from living out of the country and in the country gives me a different look on everything. And I'm probably more appreciative of that than the money that was made. I swear to God.
To be honest with you, and this is going to segue perfectly into the movie here, from everything you just told me about your story and everything I've just gotten to read up to before this, it's just an inspirational story. And I feel like how many segues to Get Out is it just when I first heard about Get Out, I was kind of inspired as a writer myself. But your story of just going out there and just saying you're going to do it and having that determination, wow, honestly, really inspiring, man. I would love to see the movie if you, or the show, actually, if you're working on that, because yeah, awesome story already.
I would love that. I really would. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm just trying to do as much as I can because someone did that for me. Mm-hmm. So now it's like, okay, now the people who've hung with me this long, you know what? Let's kick ass. Let's move forward. Let's move forward together because I'm good. Now let me make sure everyone else is good, and that makes me happy.
It's a great story of paying it forward.
Yes, I appreciate that so much.
Do you remember when you first saw the trailer for Get Out? Because it's one of those things. I remember first seeing the trailer of Get Out. Do you remember seeing that trailer?
Yes. I remember. So I remember 2 things. One, I remember seeing, I think there was a premise on either Variety or something, maybe about a couple of months before the trailer. Mm-hmm. And I read the premise and I was like, oh, this should be interesting. I didn't. You can read something and visually make it up in your head. But seeing the trailer, I will never forget where I was. I was sitting in my then girlfriend's parents' house in the living room, and I'm sitting there with her father. She's in the kitchen, and her mother or her mother-in-law is sitting in one of these small chairs, and she's like drinking tea. And I'm watching this trailer. I didn't think of it at the time until after I saw the movie, or how funny that moment was, considering that scene. But I'm watching this trailer, and automatically I go, I need to see this. But I'm also at the same time, for some reason, everyone in that house who happened to be Caucasian were not apt to see this movie, which made me want to see the movie even more. And I'm like, okay, that was like a real visceral reaction. Like, that was only a 30-second, 1-minute trailer. What did I miss? So I watched it again. I'm like, yeah, I gotta go sit and watch this for sure.
Yeah, that's because that's similar. I think I saw, when I saw the trailer myself, I was like alone, but living in a predominantly like Caucasian place, like Victoria, British Columbia, I know a lot of people weren't as enthused as I was. Like when I was talking to my friends, stuff like, they weren't as enthused. It was one of those things that when it came out and people did see it, they were all very excited, but the trailer didn't hook them as much. And also, I feel like that when Jordan Peele announced, because I remember before when they announced that Jordan Peele was going to be doing a horror movie with Blumhouse, I was like, that sounds so weird. I'm already in.
Exactly. I think that was my next reaction because, of course, you know, my thought process is, you say Jordan Peele, I'm like, Keen Peele, like that Peele, that seems off. But at the same time, I was really give it a chance because so I've done a lot of writing for, like, you know, ghostwriting and comedians and stuff like that, and there is a darkness to many comedians. You know, name pops up in my head, like, you know, talking about like Robin Williams and those guys. There is a darkness that's in them that now, since that movie, there are some comedians that have written some horror movies that I've read before they've even gotten into like any industry rags, and I go, wow, this comes. But yeah, there's a thin line between that ha-ha and sad face. So I look back at it now and I know my reaction was like, Jordan Peele, like Key and Peele? I don't know, but I'll take a look. But yeah, my first reaction was that was super off-putting. Like, I really thought I had the wrong name in my head.
Yeah, me too. And it was one of those things that now, yeah, like you said, looking back at it now, I feel like any comedian, because you can kind of see as a person, like as you write comedy, you kind of see the setups similar in the sense that it's like, you know, set up, then punchline. And it's now like any comedian going to horror, I'm like, it's probably gonna work out. Yeah,
exactly. It's like, because I like doing a lot of dark comedies, but that line between when the dark comedy becomes like that, oh shit, like that line is right there on a consistent basis. So like, if you know how to do that, and then he pairs it with like social themes and stuff like that, you're like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. Wow, that's why that freaked me out, because that's a real thing. And I think that's what gets me.
Oh yeah. And from one writer to another here, when I rewatch this movie, because I've seen this movie a number of times, but I feel like every single time I watch it, there's a line of dialogue that kind of slipped past me the first time, and the double meaning behind it. I just can't get over how genius the writing of this movie alone is. The directing is brilliant too, but the writing of this movie is on another level.
Honestly, one of the things I pointed out to a writer friend of mine is, if you really look at how much of a double meaning some of these lines of dialogue are, in terms of just how, you know, like, you know, Chris and Dean and all those guys kind of talk to each other, or how like the Walter and Georgina, like how they are. If you really look at it, you can make an entire movie based off of the things and what they can and cannot say, or what they mean and what they do not mean. 100%. It's like it's next level. It's really next level, like high, like, you know, they always talk about like, you know, high level or high concept scripts and concepts and genres. But this is really like high concept horror, where you're not seeing what's killing or potentially killing you. This is something that's in your everyday life, and you suddenly go, what did he mean by that? Like, why did he say that?
It's insane.
Yeah, it's insane, and it's terrifying, because it's not like there's a slasher. It's someone says a sentence, you've heard this sentence before. Mm-hmm. So now all of a sudden you look into real life and go, man, wait a minute, that sentence, I've heard that before 100 times. I've never thought of it that way. And it clicks. Nothing is scarier than something you've been around and think you're not in danger, but you're like, maybe I've been in danger the whole time. That's what it presents. It's a different type of psychological scare.
Oh, for sure. And there's the line that really stuck, because there's multiple lines throughout the movie, but one that Dean Armitage, like the father, says that really stuck out with me is when they're talking about the killing of the deer early on, and he's talking, he's like, oh yeah, I wish you wiped out the whole lot of them. The double meaning of that, of how he's like describing like just, oh, you just eradicate them all, they're just nothing but a nuisance. When I looked back and I saw it like this time, I was like, oh wow, I don't know how I didn't catch that the earlier time, but how that translate to race.
It's like you just sit there and you go, like, I've watched it. I've slowed down, but I was watching it a lot because it really is a masterclass in that dialogue. And then you look at, like, just thinking about what you said, like, wait a minute, was he talking about deer? Like, how was he talking? But like the description, it's like the description of everything, and then you forget, oh wait, he's talking about deer. But is he talking about deer? And it's really a masterclass in how to sell someone one way and then show them the other, and then they're screwed either way. I love it. Yeah. I absolutely love it.
And I feel that a lot of directors do a lot of these little hints, but they're usually visual. I feel like I look in the background of a horror, especially in horror. I'll see something in the background of a horror movie. I'm like, oh, it's a visual thing. But this, just the dialogue alone, how it's just, and there is a lot of visual cues in this, but the dialogue just being so descriptive is just insane to me.
Yeah, like you can look at like the old school Freddy Krueger movies, or even like the new stuff where they allude to, like, you know, how Johnny Depp wore 18, and then you'll see another horror movie that will have him wearing like that the girl having the same shirt, and those are the visual cues. You're used to that. You're almost immune to really seeing that.
Yeah.
But to have both, when you have to really look and keep your head on the swivel, it really is an allegory to how everyday, you know, Black life is for some people, where you constantly have to know the buttons and the words that are like, should I be worried? Should I not be worried? How do I avoid this? How do I not get anywhere near this? And so the visual cues are one thing, but you're hearing something else. So now what do? And he really captured that experience while making it almost dark, super dark, comically. It was just, I couldn't stop watching it. It was amazing.
And one thing I really love too, well, trust me, I'm going to keep saying one thing I really love. A lot of things I love. But Lil Rel's performance in this movie, I thought, was as the character that's literally yelling out to get out of the situation. And Daniel Kaluuya's character still continues to go into it, is also another thing that they did it in such a way that you don't like look and go, Daniel Kaluuya's character is like dumb. You just go, oh, you can kind of see where he's coming from. He thinks he knows this girl. Yep. But Lil Rel's character just like yelling out, like, you should definitely be out of the situation. The contrast is just brilliant.
Exactly. And from the perspective that, you know, we probably all know somebody who's probably thinking that on a regular basis. Like, I make jokes about it all the time. I'm like, you know, like my fiance is white, and she'll, if you hear a gunshot or hear like a firework and I run away and she walks toward it, and I'm like, what are you doing? But my friends are like, that's crazy. Why would she even want to do that? Like, just jokingly. But It's like, we all have that friend that in a serious moment, they go, bro, I don't know why she's doing it, but I don't like it. You shouldn't do it. And I think we're all used to that in a comedic way, which I think from the way they portrayed it in Get Out, Lil Rel was who we all know. We all know this person, but we usually just think he's making jokes. No, this guy's serious. Like, this is a bad thing, but we're so used to being like, you're full of shit, or stop playing.
Yeah.
Chill out. Like, you know, stop playing. We're not used to being, wait, he's actually saying this from a point of realness and not just from, you know, him just trying to be funny. And that is why it struck a chord on so many different levels, but that was like, damn, I know that guy.
Oh, for sure. I know. One thing I loved about him too is, like, in my humble opinion, and I'm not sure if I'll get hate for this from like anyone else listening to this podcast, I think he was robbed of an Oscar for that performance, because he's the best friend I've seen in any movie in the history of movies.
Absolutely. I mean, they're giving him his just due because he's getting a ton of roles.
Yeah.
He's not really like doing a lot of genre stuff. He's all over the place. He's appearing in things I wouldn't expect him to be, but he definitely got robbed. I think he should have, for the sake of, he is the he is the best friend that every writer is trying to make matter in most movies, but essentially never really does. And his role in that movie as best friend is the mountaintop of which you want that side character to be, where it's like, okay, he actually matters. Wait, hold on, we have to go back and listen. This is why we go back and look and listen to this dialogue, because if you only have one or two central characters and then you have your clear villains, if a side character is there to throw you off, but what if that side character is there is just to help you go further down that path? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
he's there to continue what we already feel is happening in this movie, but we're so used to ignoring that side character. I think he got robbed. I really think that he's an underappreciated character in at least horror movie history. And I think he'll get his just dues eventually, but compared to anyone else, I can't think of another movie where the best friend trope was played to the point where it's not even a trope. I'm like, this is how it should be done. Make me care about him because he's caring about what's going on.
And he raised the stakes, because with a best friend that's warning you that well and isn't an idiot and actually is doing everything, absolutely I've never seen a friend in a movie go this far to save somebody, did everything to save him. And also like Daniel Kaluuya's character doing everything smart and like, being in contact with his friend and not being an idiot the whole time. It's the stakes are raised so high, because usually with predictable movies, like with horror movies, there's a lot of predictability in like, oh, they're going to do this next, they're going to do this next. But they actually both of them independently did so many smart decisions.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I loved it. Like that detective scene when he goes, which is a hilarious scene, but I love it.
Oh God, that was chef kiss. That was amazing. It was one of those things where, like you said, they're doing everything right, which if you really think about the movies in the past, especially in the 80s, you know, Black folks don't make it all the way through a movie in the 80s and early 90s when it comes down, it started with Busta Rhymes and LL Cool J, I'd say jokingly, but realistically, we don't make it very far. So to watch them, not only Daniel's character, but to watch Lil Rel's character really get to the point where, wait, they're doing everything right here. Like they're making smart decisions. It's not like that guy who's like, all right, there's the running car. No, let's go hide in the basement. Like you're the worst best friend on the planet. Why are we hiding by, like, it's like that commercial. Why are we hiding behind the chainsaws? Like, I don't get it. And they were making all of the right decisions, even if they necessarily didn't go right at first. They were all saying the right thing. And it really shows you the evolution of how important these characters, Black especially, have come in terms of like, we're not going to just trip and fall. We're not going to just, we're going to fight back and win. And I love that. I love that. Detective scene was amazing. That might have been my favorite scene in the entire movie.
Yeah, that's probably up there for me too. From start to finish. Was it Erika Alexander?
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite scenes probably in the movie too. Because from start to finish, the way it builds up and then it lands with a joke and she gets the other detectives are there. Mm-hmm. That everything about that makes me laugh, but also is just so well done.
Yeah, exactly. You laugh and you go, wait a minute. Hold up, wait a minute. That shit. I was mad in the movie theater. I want to go back to that. When it came out, when I was able to watch it, I'm like, let me run that back, because I do that a lot. I feel bad for my fiance. I'll go all the way back to a scene and watch it like 2 or 3 times and just laugh my ass off, because I'm like, wow, this is high concept. This is amazing. And I think as time goes on, people will watch the movie, watch those scenes. Hell, if you're listening to this podcast, go back and watch that scene and go, damn, wow, they were making sense. And it was just well done. The writing, like you said, the directing was great. The writing was what we all strive to be, essentially.
Absolutely. Maybe we're a little biased here, but can you think about a horror movie that has as much rewatch value as Get Out?
Wow. No.
I can't. I tried to think about it. I was trying to think of one before, but every single one, like there's a lot of visual cues they're cool when you see them the first time. But this one has so many lines of dialogue that are like cues that I can watch this 1,000 times and the jokes land every single time. And like everything works. Doesn't matter if it's my first or 1,000th time watching it. Exactly.
I can't think of a horror movie that I sat there and I was like, if I had to watch it, I can't really think of it. There's a couple that if I saw them, I would be like, okay, I'll watch through it. But like, if like when we thought about Get Out, I went and watched it again, and I've watched it probably one more time in between because I'll happily watch it over again.
Oh yeah.
And it's not one of those things where, oh, I've seen it passing, maybe I'll do it. It's like, no, you know what? I feel, yeah, it's in that circle of movies that like the Big Lebowski for me is a movie I watch probably once a month. Get Out at one point was probably one of those where I'm like, this is just a masterclass in how most writers want to be, but it's also just really well done, well put together, and it bucks what a horror movie is or has been up to that point. And I think that's the winning point for me.
Yeah, and I feel like the legacy of this movie, it's only came out in 2017, but I feel that it changed the genre so much. Like as far as like for Black filmmakers, I feel that it across the board, actually, not even just the genre, I feel that it like spearheaded such a movement that got like social like messages into film, and
yes,
to get that like more like get people more passionate about seeing it, but also to be making it. And I feel that a lot of movies have been trying, or movies and TV shows have been trying to get that exact part, and they've done pretty well. But Get Out's just in a class of its own.
Well, like for example, like I think you're first of all, you're absolutely right, because I think the horror movie genre became super one note for a little bit. Mm-hmm. It you know, you have some sci-fi stuff that's really good and out there, and then you have some stuff that people forget about. But then you had the slashers and, you know, screams and stuff like that, and it became one note. You know, then they started doing the, you know, found footage thing, and they forgot about like the classics that probably inspired parts of Get Out, like, you know, the original Stepford Wives and The Shining, where there isn't somebody like an axe murderer, like those movies, like Silence of the Lambs, those movies that scare you without scaring you, or like visually giving you cues. But then the movies that inspired it, like I remember I sat on a podcast a long time ago, like probably 2 years ago, and I said one of the biggest movies that jumped to my head that made me think this is, you know, amongst all the horror movies I think were up there is, that inspired like the foundation of it is Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Like, oh my God, it's you sit there and you go, wow, this is basically the nightmare of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, like Sidney Poitier's, like this is what it is. And I think over time you sit there and you go, most of these horror movies aren't trying to make you be afraid of anything but what you see, jump scares and men in masks. And honestly, you know, if you're a pretty good writer, you can write those things. Like, you know, we both watched a shit ton of horror movies in our lives and could probably write a slasher film without even trying.
Oh, absolutely.
It's you know, the formula is pretty simple. It's just whether or not how bloody you want to be and what kind of mask you want to wear. But with this it changed the game, because now you're sitting there going, damn, I don't have to scare someone with a knife. I don't have to scare someone with a demon or a monster. I can scare them with things that are based in reality, which in my head, personally, feels like it's, if you can base a real scare in your reality, that should be scarier than Jason walking through on Friday the 13th.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things too, right? Like a lot of the horror movies, they have to not show the monster in the trailer. Get Out can do anything it wants, really. It could have shown anything in the trailer and it didn't matter. But the trailers were perfect and kept it mysterious enough. But it wouldn't have even mattered if they spoiled it. You still need to visually see it. Exactly. It doesn't matter if you know how this ends. You still need to see it.
You have to sit there and you watch it. And you're like you're always waiting for the monster. But by the time you get to the middle of this, you go, oh shit, they're the these are people I might see every day. Mm-hmm. These are the monsters. Like, holy crap, this is someone I can walk down the street. You know, it's I think that's far scarier than thinking, you know, the leprechaun's going to come from under my bed. Like,
oh, for sure.
It's reality-based scares, which is why I think little by little with the you know, the found footage stuff, this is what drove them. Found footage, that paranormal activity stuff. It's because could that happen? But they would show it in a way that somebody just happened to set up a camera, which I see that's a version of what this is. But this is people talking to people and the coded language and how they speak and why they speak and why they do these things. It's words that we've all heard. It's little things that you would not take as seriously, but also might realize as you get older are slights. The perfect example of that is, as an African American man, the first thing I learned, I think the worst thing I've ever heard that wasn't an obviously like racist word, was me being told I speak so well. And
yep.
I didn't, at the time when I was younger, it didn't hit as much as it did when I was in my 20s. And I go, oh shit. Like, wow, wait a minute. I know what that means now. Like, wow, you speak so well. And it's all, I think the term that I came up with, which I used on stage once, was most Black folks, there's a lot of Black folks who get a specific type of racism. There's the overt racism. I'm almost 7 foot, so I don't get overt racism. I get subtle racism. I get what I call auction block racism. Which is
auction block racism.
Auction block racism, where it's like, wow, you're a big guy, and they're patting me on the shoulder, and they're kind of like, but I was watching this movie going, wow, he's really checking him out like, wow, you have a nice body. And I'm like, bro, I've heard this before. Like,
yeah, a lot of that happened, obviously in this movie. And yeah,
it was like, I heard this before. You speak so well. He's patting me on the shoulder. Like, I'm like, this is familiar. And that's what's more scary to me, because it struck me in a familiar place that I've kind of heard this throughout my now 38 years of life. So I don't, I realize that is far scarier than I think I could beat Jason's ass if he walked through the door. If Jason busted his door, I like my chances. But if some of that stuff that I hear every day, you don't know what angle that's coming from. And that could be terrifying if you're not prepared for it.
Of course. And he was stranded, especially in this movie, right? Because it really shows what I think I loved about this movie too, is that it gives a way for people that aren't used to going through this experience, right, to actually visually see a way for Black people to explain it, right? Like I feel like I've told friends, I'm like, hey, if you watch Get Out, I feel like there's a lot more understanding, especially like where I live in Canada. There's not, where I am specifically, there's not too many Black people, but if they've seen Get Out, they kind of understand things. And I think that terms like the sunken place becoming in like popular verbiage is was very interesting too. And just a lot of things that came out of Get Out, it sparked such a conversation that I've never seen a movie do in a very long time. Like, not especially in a horror movie, I haven't really seen this sort of conversation or social message out of a movie.
Exactly. You really don't expect that in a horror movie. And, as a person who also, I grew up in a town that didn't have a lot of Black folks. I'm a councilman in a town that has less than 5% maybe Black folks. And there's conversations where you have, and you sit there and you listen, and you go, man, these sentences, what happens and how it happens, these are sentences I hear every day. So like, there are people around me, except for my then girlfriend, who had no interest in watching this film, literally refused. It was so crazy that she was so uncomfortable with watching it. And I never, now that I look back at it, I go, that should have been a red flag. But she was so uncomfortable with the idea of watching this, where I was sitting there going, man, these are conversations I've had, with some of her former, close family members. Like, and I think I've told many of my friends, white or otherwise, that are not people of color, I'm like, look, you want to have an understanding of basically what would be considered an exaggerated form, but not necessarily exaggerated. I would say almost accurate, to the point of, man, I've heard all these things. I'm like, watch Get Out. Get Out will tell you, like you said, they brought up sunken place, became a part of the normal verbiage, and how you watch that and you hear people go, oh, that's not real. I'm like, all I can think of is, bro, listen, a good portion of that dialogue is stuff that I have come across. And
I feel like until it gets to the brain surgery part, that's everything else I've experienced. Exactly. Until they actually get to him chained down brain surgery part, everything else in this movie I've definitely experienced. That whole party scene, exactly. I've been to that party.
Yep. Exactly. I sat there. It was like the only time I was like, all right, now it's, they're going off onto the horror path more, is that brain surgery scene. Everything that happened prior to that, all you can do is sit there and go, wow, this is amazing. But also this is from a place of honesty, because I would say a good portion, especially those who've grown up in, more predominantly Caucasian areas, have gone through, even if it's not necessarily to take over your body, but it's like you hear these conversations, you go, damn, how am I supposed to take that? And you really don't realize that until you become an adult. And then you're like, damn, now I know how to take that, but now how do I react to it? And it goes back to like Lil Rel's role, which is, he's your voice. I feel like he was the voice of Daniel's character in a way that we have him as a best friend, but also he's the voice of what we would normally react if we were like younger. But as you get older, you hear these things and you realize you can't react. Yeah. You can't freak out, because you now know the real meaning of you speak so well, or you're, all these other small, slightly racial innuendos, but you can't react, because whatever you do reacting wise is infinitely worse than what could potentially happen. Mm-hmm. But it's a double-edged sword, because if you don't react, you end up on that table with brain surgery. So it's like, what do you do? And that's the thing that I think most African Americans, specifically men, go through every day. Like you sit there, or whatever country, you're sitting there going, okay, I know what this means, but I can't freak out. I have to lay low or be cool. And it's a very, very, very thin line.
Another one was the dinner scene too, with the brother. That was another. I was like, I've been to that dinner. I've been around that brother. I've been around that guy before.
Yes.
Right? Where it's like, where you're getting too weirdly physical, and it's just like, and you bring up my race in a very strange way. I'm like, yeah, I've had that dinner before. Like, I've definitely been there too.
It's like, I'm like, wow, this is like automatically, I'm not really good at hiding my facial expressions or like mincing my words. So it's like that dinner scene, it was a cringy moment, because I'm like, yeah, I've been there and watched it roundabout come back to race. And I'm like, I don't even know how we worked our way back to this, but here we are. So, and you have to sit there and have that conversation, but go, why does this keep happening? Like it's just an awkwardness that makes you go, this is a real life thing. And I think that is the quintessential reason why I think it's one of the best horror movies of all time.
Oh, for sure.
It's scarier than any, maybe when I was younger. It's like I watched Freddy Krueger when I was younger, might have freaked me out, but now as an adult, you can see how campy that stuff was. You can see like all those things. This, I could be 50, I could turn around. These are conversations I'm still going to have. Yeah. These are conversations I'm still going to have and continue to have probably for the rest of my life. And that is frightening. That is terrifying. The bump in the night is not a bump in the night. It's the guy who walks by down your street and says, have a nice day. It's really crazy.
I honestly think this is it's like essential viewing for, it doesn't matter who you are. Like
yes.
Are you a film fan? Great. Essential viewing. Do you like horror? Great. Essential viewing. If you want to learn about like the social aspect of it, it's essential viewing. I can't think of who I wouldn't suggest it to, is what makes it so perfect.
Exactly. I genuinely don't know if there's a person that I could think of that would make me go, you shouldn't watch this, or maybe you should. I would be like, look, watch this. If screenwriting wise, I've had workshops where they're like, top five movies to watch, where you have to get there and go, okay, this is a masterclass in how this is supposed to go. And Get Out's in there, where you can just double mean and double entendre and all this other stuff. And you're just like, wow, this is just so much going on, and you're gonna have to rewatch it, but you're gonna love every minute of rewatching it.
Oh yeah, and even the casting is out of this world. Betty Gabriel. My note for Betty Gabriel here is just Betty Gabriel, because I could just talk about her forever. That is there's no small parts role I've ever seen. She was so brilliant in every single moment, and so haunting with the moments where she didn't even have dialogue, where they're just looking where he's looking at her through the window, and she looks back over, even those moments. But that no scene, which I'm actually wearing a shirt with that image on it right now. That scene is so good, and
my gosh, frightening. Like just you doing the no. It's chills. Of like, oh my God, like that's that is scary. Like just the concern in her voice, where you almost feel like she wants to say more, but she clearly can't or isn't able to. And that no just echoes in your head. And you're like, oh my God, that is terrifying.
I literally just got chills just when it's the words are on her lips too. Like, but when she just pauses herself, I think you can picture the scene. She just pauses herself just for that brief moment, and that tear that rolls down her cheek. I'm like, I can't. Everything about it was so well directed. She was perfect for that role. Oh, yeah, that's insane.
And I'm between her, and I think that's the thing. Like you said, there are no small parts, and everyone played a specific part. I mean, Lakeith, I'm a big fan of Lakeith.
Oh,
so I felt like I knew what he was going to do, and for what he is and what he's presented himself to be, I'm super excited. And Daniel's, listen, he just won his Oscar.
Yeah.
He earned it. That the scene that I think it was the scene with in Black Messiah, Judas and Black Messiah, like that scene where he was that speech in the church made me cry. Like, it was just, he is a fantastic actor. I get in a lot of trouble because I know a lot of American actors who get upset that British actors come and take Black American roles, but and it's not their fault. Most British actors are classically trained, so they go hard. They go hard theater, film. There's just another level, and what he brings to anything is a level of, is a multifaceted, multi-level person that has felt these things while acting like someone else who has to feel these things. I felt like there were times throughout the movie where he's acting, but is he acting? And that's what I was saying. Like, you just feel that. You felt like he was acting, but he's experienced this. This is not his first rodeo. So these are not things he has to sit there and try to drum up. This is something that he's just talking, because these lines of dialogues and these situations, and like we said, the things that are said to us and how we are kind of approached as Black men are considerably normal for us. And I think when he, that scene with the, in the living room going into the sunken place, and he does that Denzel one tear down his eye, it was perfection, because you can see, acting or no acting, that pain that you see in his eyes, are like, I am lost. She's got me. I'm in trouble. Like, I don't know what to do. But these are things that cross our minds on a regular basis. He just happened to put that out there in a specific way, and I love him for it. He's one of my favorites.
Me too. Did you hear that when he was auditioning for the role, how he got it, that they got him pretty much through that scene? He did it 5 times in a row, just nailed that same tear every single time. That's
crazy. I did not know that. Wow. But he's one of the best. I mean,
he really is.
He is a generational actor. Like, he really is. He isn't even, and the crazy thing is, he hasn't even really gotten to the cusp of what I think he's going to be. And I think that's the beauty of it. I know he's won his Oscar, but and people forget he's 32 years old. He just started I remember seeing him in he was in a Sucker Punch at the Royal Court Theater, and he was like amazing. And this was like years ago. I'm like, man, this guy's gonna be amazing. And he's just next level. Skins too.
I was gonna say, because I was born in England. I moved to Canada on this date, like in 1992. So,
oh, wow.
On May 2nd, 1992. And I followed, like, obviously a lot of British films and shows, and Skins is where I first remember him from. And then I think after Skins, I saw him in Black Mirror was the next time I saw him in. And then from there, I've always just rooted for that guy. He's so good.
I when I was playing overseas, my home base, if I wasn't in Vienna, I lived in Birmingham for many years. So every bit of my production knowledge exists because of that story I was telling you about, saying that shot was shit. Mm-hmm. That was on a set in Wales. Like, I was on this, everything production-wise I've ever learned is from the UK. Every acting class I've audited is from the UK. The fact that I can write things and heist movies that are like Guy Ritchie and know those slang and Cockney and all that stuff is because of that time. Over 14 years, I would always go back to the UK and be there most of the summer. So it's just a different, from a humor standpoint, from everything. It's just a very different approach to things as actors, as their shows, and what they do show and how they talk. And I think, that perspective from a screenwriter perspective, from a cinematographer or a production head perspective, or from an actor perspective, gives you a different way of approaching things. And I think he's mastered that way of approaching things in a way that I don't think anyone understands.
And it's interesting to see the rise of like a lot of Black British actors coming over here, like John Boyega, Idris Elba, Letitia Wright. We're getting a lot more of the Black British actors because they get the roles in the UK, but not like they're getting roles in the States.
Yeah.
So it's really became this like vacuum from there, because the amount of talent, like you're saying, it's different. It's very interesting. There's not to get me wrong, there's obviously a list of talented it goes without saying Black actors in or African American actors, but the British actors we are getting are just very, very unique for the different roles they're getting too, as well as their portrayal. Because when you see them in interviews, you almost can forget that they're from England.
Yeah, exactly. And it's more or less like, because the UK is such a tight area, comparatively to the United States, and productions are, roles are not, they're there, but they're not there. So it's like you run out of space. And then you come here and there's an independent scene, and then there's a guerrilla filmmaking scene, and then there's a studio scene, and then there's that mid-level and ultra low budget. There's so many things that you can bite your teeth into because there's a lot of filmmakers. And if you find something, you're good. Like John Boyega was that movie? Was it Protect the Block or
Attack the Block? Yeah,
Attack the Block. And that movie, for me, no one talks about it enough, but that movie was made on a shoestring budget. That movie was made for, comparatively to some of the stuff like Star Wars, like compared to them, nothing. And there's an understanding of how important those stories are, whether science fiction or horror or dark comedy or whatever, need to be told in specific ways, in specific light. And you don't really get a lot of that overseas in terms of the UK. But you can, John Boyega can go into New York and, find a good script, and they'll film it, we'll make it happen. And I think in Canada, like Canada specifically as well, you guys have an understanding of there's a lot of space to tell a lot of stories. And you don't really have that in the UK as much because, it's an island. Mm-hmm. So they're coming over here and they're doing incredibly well because they're very, very good. It's almost unfair how good they are. And not to say like, we have Michael B. and, Denzel and John David Washington and those guys. But I think they're coming over here at a right time, because those guys are either, with the exception of Michael B. and John David, a lot of our great African-American actors are getting older.
Yep. And
there is a very big gap between them and the younger generation, which is really only John David and Lakeith and then Michael B. And then you have a few here and there, but then there's a giant gap. So now the John Boyegas, even Idris is a little older, but still Idris and Daniel, those guys are coming in there filling that gap. Mm-hmm. And I have no complaints. I don't care, they're telling the story because, whether it's a British accent or no accent at all, they're telling the story and they're doing a damn good job of doing it. And I'm always appreciative whenever I get to work with any actors, but I love just how deep they dive. And Daniel Kaluuya definitely dove into this role, and you felt it, and you knew it, and you knew he cared, and he felt it personally. I think that showed on. I definitely know it showed on the screen.
Yeah, he has one of those, like the way he expressed himself in every single role. Like I was just thinking too now, like even him in like Black Panther, where he didn't have the biggest role, but at the same time, it's in no small parts. Like he just the way he expresses himself in like any moment in that film too. It's just that's a movie that had the casting was phenomenal too. Black Panther, when you see the full cast of that, was perfect.
It is he is it's like in baseball, there's these guys they call all or nothing baseball players. You know, those guys that you swing for the fences. You either miss or you knock it out of the park. And his passion, Lakeith is the same way too. They go hard. Like you watch Atlanta, and they go hard. It's all or nothing. There's nothing else to it. They're gonna go and do their thing, and they're gonna give you every ounce of passion, every ounce of focus. They're going to break this. They're going to break this down to the point where there is nothing left to be, thought of. Like, what if he did this? Or what if they might think that, but the average person or filmmaker is going to be like, Jesus Christ, there's not much we could do. And I'm thinking of, I forgot about Brian Tyree Henry.
I was just going to mention him. I was just going to say that. That's so funny.
He's fantastic. I liked him ever since he was in before this, but when he was in Hotel Artemis and how I was like, man, this is dope. Like he's good. And, clearly Donald Glover. So like those guys, like putting all those guys on the same screen, watching them, they all go hard. And I think that's the thing that Daniel does. And that's what Lakeith does. It's fun to watch as a filmmaker. It's fun to watch it because it's hard to watch film already because you're a filmmaker. So you break things down automatically and you automatically hate or just, don't like how things are edited or cut or shot. But when you go watch someone just put on a clinic online or in a movie theater and you're going, damn, like, I don't even worry about the movie. The acting was so damn strong. It just, he just went all in. And you appreciate that. That's the art. That's what you want,
Absolutely. Did you see Widows, by the way?
I'm sorry?
Did you see Widows?
Yes.
That's another one of his like great ones. Ed Bry, Tyree Henry in that. And those two together, like, please give them about 1,000 movies together. I thought that was a great chemistry too. And Viola Davis, who is
and that's what I'm saying. But first of all, Viola Davis is the patron saint of all actresses. It's either her or Meryl Streep and nobody else in my head. And being able to come into a scene with Viola Davis and just be able to not even just hold your own, but to do well enough where I know when they said cut, she had to give him a high five. Because Viola Davis is next level. And for them to sit there and be able to just be like, I can handle that, man, automatically. Widows was great. I enjoyed it, but watching those two made me go, if you can hold your own with Viola Davis in a scene and not sweat through the back of your shirt, forget the fact that you're like kicking ass. It was amazing to watch. And that's why I know, like, from a future standpoint, you're right. Give them any movie they want together where they're in the same movie for more than 5 seconds. Like, absolutely. I would love that. I would watch that.
And we could have a whole podcast just talking about Black actors, and I could do this forever. I was like thinking Octavia Spencer, like I could just do this.
Forever. Man, when you want to do that, or we can talk about when you talk about Ma at some point. If you haven't,
hey, I haven't. No,
pencil me in. I will. Oh, that's another movie.
Yeah, will do. One thing I did want to, because we were talking about British films. And I know that we have a connection on this because it was one of the reasons we started talking. Can we discuss the Cornetto trilogy?
I'm sorry to hear you.
The Cornetto trilogy?
Oh, yeah. Ha!
I was like, wrote it down. I'm like, no, we have to talk about that too. I know this is a Get Out podcast, and I really want to talk about Get Out, and we've talked about Get Out. But the Cornetto trilogy is another, like, I think that's like a masterclass of comedy. Like, it's Hot Fuzz for me is one of the movies that I've watched a number of times. And I feel like the jokes land every single time.
I watched Hot Fuzz last Friday, not randomly. Hot Fuzz is, by and large, I have had discussions, like, I like World's End, but I always have to think about Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead. Mm-hmm. And those movies strike me so much. Like, I get so happy talking about them because they're just another level of, this is ridiculous. Like, I love this. Like, Edgar Wright is my favorite. Like, I mean, I'll watch anything Edgar Wright does. Baby Driver, all that stuff. But this Shaun of the Dead is great. Hot Fuzz is great. The World's End is great. But if I had to choose, I would put The World's End behind those two.
Oh yeah, me too. But that's fair.
But Hot Fuzz is just it's just incredible. And every time I hear someone say they've never watched, because I've come across people who are like, I've never watched Hot Fuzz. I'm like, are you joking right now? Like, or Shaun of the Dead. I'm like, Shaun of the Dead might be essential watching for any zombie movie ever made.
Yes, and I think that Hot Fuzz is essential watching for buddy cop movies. I absolutely do. Like, I think that it's. Did you hear that originally Nicholas Frost's role was supposed to be for a woman, and they just kept the same role? It's like a romantic comedy.
And it's a romantic comedy. I heard that, and I'm like, this is perfect.
It makes it even better watching it.
Yeah, like exactly. I heard that and went back and watched it, and I'm like, that was what, 2007. I watched it again. And I go, this is perfect. They're perfect. They're perfect together. Anytime those two do a movie, whatever those films are, I am down. Even if it's only for like a hot second, it makes me happy. I selfishly want more. I know that we probably wouldn't get more, but I selfishly would want more. But it's just a great trilogy. It's literally a textbook on how to do the zombie movie, how to do the sci-fi movie, and how to do a buddy cop movie and make it both ridiculous and amazing at the same time.
It's a visual comedy masterclass too. Like of the best visual comedy gags I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, the callbacks alone, like, and then how they tied them together in their own specific way. It's just it's hard to explain how much. Like, I'll probably get off of this podcast with you and watch Hot Fuzz again.
Yeah, one of my favorite callbacks in that movie is the farmer's mom callback, and then like he drop kicks her in the face. That's one of my favorite callbacks of all time. God. And me and my wife, we do that joke like whatever, like we just switch out the words with whatever, right? Like whatever. Yeah. It's like, yeah, well, everyone's doing it. It's like, yeah, like who? And we just throw it in every single time for anything, and it's just a dumb joke we always do that no one else gets.
It's and that's the thing. There's a lot. Like, I like the fact that there aren't a ton of people who've seen the movie, but they have. But exactly, like, my best friend and I know every line of those 2 or 3 movies, and we will sit there, and sometimes we used to be at like a party, and we'll talk, and we'll just be trading lines, and people are looking at each other like, what are they talking about? Like, let's go. And then I'll go home and watch the movie. So it's in my, like, all 3 of them, specifically Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead. Those are in my top 15. Yeah, for almost everything. It's just, and I'm a big Edgar Wright fan. I got to meet Edgar Wright a while ago.
Oh, how was this? How was he?
He's the coolest person. Like, he's exactly what I thought he was going to be. Pretty cool. Like, he was very generous in his knowledge. He really talked a lot, which was really cool. But he was great. Like, this is like, I met him right before he got named to direct Ant-Man.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was his big deal. Even though, I mean, I'm like, he's like, yeah, it's a big deal. I'm like, bro, all your other movies were big deals to me. So this is great. But yeah, he was amazing, honestly, but very knowledgeable. You could tell he cares about everything he does. He's involved. He's not one of those directors that once production's over, it's over. He's in post here and there. No, he's everything that he wants to do, he's involved in, and you can tell his heart is in everything that he does. It was a very rewarding conversation. I hope to cross paths with him again.
Oh, I love to hear it. That's so cool. To circle back here to Get Out, do you think that, and I think this is up there, I can't really see too many arguments against this. Do you think this is one of the best directorial debuts of all time?
Absolutely.
It's hard to say what else would be.
I can't. I mean, if I had to really, really like think, I don't even know. If I had to think of a person that had a first movie that was like knock it out of the park, but I'm not necessarily sure it was her first movie. Actually, no, it wasn't, because I was thinking of Hurt Locker, Catherine Bigelow, but that was like. She did K-19 and something else. So, she did a couple more before. Yeah, she did Point Break too. So, I don't think anyone's had a better directorial debut. Like, especially when you have been so ingrained as somebody that people have laughed with and at, and to then buck the fact that people are like, wait, horror? And then have the same questions for, well, why would I watch Jordan Peele do anything involving horror? And you realize that you watch this and you go, holy shit. like, like the only thing that I think, I'm still trying to think of another one. I'm thinking maybe was Reservoir Dogs Quentin Tarantino's debut? I think that might have been his debut movie. Yeah, because it's either that. That's the only thing I could think that it still wouldn't come close. After that, I'm a big fan of the Coen brothers. So like the Blood Simple, that's it. I love that movie. But between Tarantino and Coen brothers, if you watch any of my projects, anything that I've done, you can tell I've watched a lot of those movies. So I will tell you right now, no, there is no one in the same ballpark for their first movie out to just do what it did and change. It's a genre-changing movie.
Yes.
It is a genre change. The word horror does not mean the same way it did prior to 2017.
Yeah, I'm going to say a hyperbolic statement, and this may break this online friendship that we have here, but I think that this movie is as important to the horror genre as like The Matrix was to the sci-fi genre, as far as terms of like how this inspired other filmmakers and everything. I just think it's as important.
I agree because you can see what this movie has done to the horror genre almost immediately. Mm-hmm. You see, like how they did Lovecraft Country,
yep,
or how they do Them, which is up on I think Amazon. Mm-hmm. You see the influence. Hell, you see the influence in of
Antebellum as well.
Antebellum. You see the influence on how the posters are. You see these things, and these directors and these people, like, he has legitimately not only changed the genre, but he's also created a completely new genre that mm-hmm. forces people to really, because the thing is, with Black movies, sometimes they get lumped into the same thing. Back in the 70s, they'll have like Blaxpiration, and then you've got a couple other movies, and you got the normal hood and stuff movies. So what he has done for me and for everybody is to take this movie that probably for most people wouldn't have expected from a guy who's known for comedy, mm-hmm. if you don't know any comedians and stuff like that, and turned horror on its head and then created another genre out of it. There are whole series movies that have been made from 2000. Mind you, this isn't 20 years ago. This is 2017. He's genuinely changed the game in the last 4 years, that there have been at least 6 to 8, maybe even 10 versions, or they could be their own universes within that universe of people who have had to exist and know these type of horrors, but turning it into something that is very hard to define, because you want to call it horror, but you want to call it a psychological thriller, but it's a bunch of Black folks in a movie, but it's not a Blaxpiration movie. So where do you put it? You can't. It's just the smartest, most conscious, socially or otherwise, horror movie, to the point where I call it a horror movie, but I feel like I'm being disingenuous by taking away from just putting it in that genre. It spawned an entire different genre. Absolutely. that people try to emulate. And so far, obviously, Antebellum and Them, they've successfully done it. I like Lovecraft Country as well, but watching it, and then I think the most important part for me is, as a person who's been in those writers' rooms and been the black dot in the white sheet of paper, to watch it inspire younger Black, whether American or Canadian, filmmakers and screenwriters to go, wait a minute, this story I have in my head is not as crazy as I once thought.
Absolutely.
Now, let me push this into competitions. Let me try to get into these writers' rooms. Let me finance and try to make this short film or this proof of concept, or let me sit down and write this. And I love it. It's inspiring to watch, because I'll occasionally adjunct for a screenwriting class, and I've watched it. It's you see the development, but you see more, younger guys Black guys going to film school, and these ideas that they thought were too out there or too crazy. People who are nerds like us. Like I'm a horror nerd, a sci-fi guy. I love those things, but in comic books, I love all those things. but there was a time where that wasn't expected from us. Now, I mean, you can look left or right. You can't find you'll find us just writing just about anything. And I think Jordan Peele, I hope he knows this. If he ever listens to this, he has inspired an entire new generation of writers who don't have to worry about people judging them by the ideas they have, because they're not crazy, because they're based in reality, or they're based in a version of reality that they might live, or an idea that they thought was dumb or someone told them was dumb. There's a whole bunch of people looking for them now.
I couldn't agree more. And on top of that, he let the door open, right? Because now the studios that actually have the power to be like, hey, yes or no, he also did that too, right? Like, he inspired me as a writer to want to do this story. But I feel like he's gotten, like, because of how profitable it was, I believe it was the most profitable movie of that year as far as like budget to
by a lot.
Yeah. And it smashed that. He, like you said, she showed that these stories can not only they work, but they sell. And that's what it comes down to. Because a lot of movies that are like cult hits, which is where I kind of thought this was going to go originally. I didn't think it was going to, I thought I was like, oh, when I saw the trailer, I was like, I know I'm in love with this.
Yeah.
I think it was going to be the biggest movie of like the sell of that year. And this talked about, I didn't think that was going to happen. I was so excited about that.
Oh, 100%. I would tell you right now, I figured it'd follow in the same vein of other comedy movies or dark comedy movies or whatever that would be like well liked, and then eventually in 10 years it'd be appreciated. Like, The Big Lebowski, I loved it when it first came out. I snuck into a movie theater to see it, but it wasn't appreciated until recently, in the last 15 years. Whereas this movie, I think, exceeded so much of the expectations that you have to sit there and look back. And I know because it's all about, if this is going to make money, but it made money. And Jordan Peele, not only did he leave the door open, he put a freaking stopper there to keep the door open. And there's so many people that are like, well, I think I can pull this off, or I know I can. And it's a genre breaking, and genre creating moment for not only horror, but for other horror writers of color who have what would be deemed weird shit to talk about, or weird ideas to think of, but they're not weird. They're just different versions or different stories that you have, studios, whether big or small, never really gave a chance. But guess what? They're giving you a chance now.
Exactly.
They're giving you a chance now, because nothing's off the table, because there was a whole block of people that weren't given much other than, the hood movies. And I get that that's what they saw. But then the moment someone's like, you're hood or very, very funny, then somebody was like, let me show you versions of all these movies you've talked about and turn it on its head. And he did it well. And now he's, Twilight Zone, Us, like some of these movies that you just sit there and you go, this is incredible. So he is, by and large, he has to be the most inspirational filmmaker of color for, us, but also honestly for everyone else. I'll give you this. I would say that the horror movies of like Ari Aster, those guys, I don't think those guys get a lot of love as much as they do for their eclectic or different types of horror, without someone blowing it out of the water saying, damn, these guys can make $100 million doing this. Holy shit, let's figure this out and get them out there. And I've really, like, from a screenwriting perspective, I appreciate the hell out of Jordan Peele in every way, because
me too.
He's done so much. I really don't think he understands. Maybe he does, and he hides it well, but I don't even think he understands how he's inspired a new generation of horror writers and screenwriters of eclectic natures.
I hope he does understand.
I hope so too.
Speaking of directorial debuts, I believe you've got a feature film directorial debut on the way here coming soon. I'd love to hear more about your movie.
Yes. So, I mean, thanks to the pandemic, it's slowed it down a little bit.
Yeah.
But so my directorial debut is a film called Border. It's a dark comedy, disillusioned and on the run. A notorious transgender hit woman named Michelle takes refuge in a spare bedroom of a widower in a Jersey Shore town. And I wrote this several years ago, and I wrote it, and I had a friend of mine who was kind of like, he goes, I don't think this will ever fly, whatever. And I actually became really cool with, well, now she goes by Fiora Wise, and she is a transgender woman. And I wrote this and sent it to her. And I was like, look, I really feel like you should be on this. Like this is you. And I think she was hesitant because, they didn't really think that was a genre or that was something that she could be a lead without having some sort of gimmick or whatever. And I'm like, no, we got this. And we busted our ass to push it out there. It was a lot of fun to write. It's basically, at least, it's one of my favorite scripts that I've ever written. And I worked really, really hard to push it out there. Like it was probably the most arduous thing I could think of to get it to the point where now we're like, oh, you know what? This is actually going to work. So we're supposed to start production at the end of this year.
Mm-hmm.
And the kid we've already casted. It's up on IMDb. It's going to be a fantastic movie. It's going to be a lot of work. We're going to probably have to shoot a lot in the next in probably 20 days. It's going to be nuts, but it's going to be a lot of fun. It's more fun than I probably should be allowed to do just shooting it.
On concept alone, because I remember when I think I just asked you on an Instagram story and you sent me that I asked you about like what's a story that you're very excited about. I think was a question I asked you, and you sent me the log line on an Instagram story, and I was like, oh, I want to see that immediately. It sounds really cool, really, really original.
We actually did a proof of concept called The Hit, which was basically a scene within this. It's actually up. I'll actually send you the link, but it was called The Hit, and I basically took one of my favorite scenes. 2 scenes in the movie, and we filmed it down in Florida and whatnot, where I was down there living, and it turned out really well. It actually got into a bunch of festivals, but that proof of concept is what got the funding for Border.
Oh, wow.
It was like, I'm not, I'm going through all this stuff trying to get this done with the script, and I know the business. I know how to produce these things. You know what? I'm going to direct and produce this. And I wrote that short. It was maybe 15, 20 pages. We shot it in over 3 days and we crushed it. And I shopped that around for probably another 4 or 5 months. And on the 6th month, we started getting traction and it went from there. So yeah, The Hit, that's, it was fantastic. It was starring Monica Eldridge, who is down in Florida, a fantastic actress. And a couple other people, so it went really well.
Perfect. Is The Hit on YouTube or is it available for?
It's on Vimeo.
On Vimeo, okay. So that's perfect. I can put that in the show notes because I'd love to see that. And
yeah, absolutely. I'll send the proof of concept. It was a lot of fun to direct. I'm very proud of it, but I'm more proud that it turned into a feature film. Yeah,
that's really awesome. I mean, when it comes out or when the trailer comes out, I'd love to share that too. Because first I'd love to see it, but I'd love to share it, of course.
I appreciate that so much. I'm very excited for it. I think everyone else is, and I think it's gonna be cool. It's gonna be a lot of fun. It's gonna be great. I think it's gonna be a really, really great movie. It'll be my first feature-length film, and I'm excited. I'm excited to get to it. I have one short that's coming out now, so I'm kind of getting myself ready for that. But I'm really, really excited. I'm looking forward to it.
Really cool. All right. Well, I've had a great conversation here. We should wrap up here because I could keep on. I've got like 1,000 more questions, but I feel like we'll be a 3-hour podcast. So we keep going, and I want to have you back for another podcast. So
yes, please. I have a lot of fun doing this. I loved your Instagram stuff. I mean, you've made me laugh even when I'm half tired and all of a sudden, or I'm drinking coffee and I'll read something on your Instagram and I'll do a spit take. We're like, now you got me on that one. So yeah, anytime you want to do this, I'm down. I'll make it happen.
Perfect, man. Before I let you go, where can we find you online?
I have my own website, so it's kevinlmartin.com. A lot of my photography, a lot of my proof of concepts and my other works up there. I'm also on Instagram at codename_Leon. The same for Twitter, codename_Leon. And from the music perspective, it's 3143mgmt.com. That's where a lot of the music production that I do. But yes, so that's where you can find everything that I do. And if you're interested in anything, I'm a talker, clearly, so hit me up.
I'll put all this in the show notes so everyone can find it. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I'm dead serious. Please, please, please make that autobiography or TV series about your life so I can see it, because you're an absolutely fantastic person to talk to. And this was like one of my favorite things to tackle. And I couldn't ask for a better guest to get into it. So thank you so much.
I appreciate that so much. Thanks for having me. And I can't wait to do this again.
Thank you so much. And my handles to find me are at West Coast Strange. So West Coast Strange at on Instagram as well as on Facebook. This has been another No Stranger to Horror. Thank you again, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right, everyone. I'll see you guys all later. Be kind and watch more horror. Bye, everybody.